Hello guys, welcome back to the next tutorial. Going further in loops, today in this one I'm going to talk about break, continuous statements, and while else. This is, I don't know if it's there in other programming languages, but in Python there's a else condition that we can use with while and for loops, and let's talk about all those things. So here's our new file which says break and continue. So what does break statement means? What it does is it helps us to break out of the closest and closing loop, and I'm going to talk what closest and closing loop means. And continuous statement means that we can go to the start of the closest and closing loop. So the first thing is, what is closest and closing loop? So this is a loop, right? So if I put a break statement up here somewhere, so it applies to this loop. Just imagine if there is one more loop inside this loop, while x is less than 2 or something, just like that, and I put a break statement up here. So this statement is gonna affect this loop, the closest and closing. So we can have multiple levels of loops, right? So this is what we meant by closest and closing loop, and we're gonna now talk about what this break statement is actually gonna do. So let's get rid of this and talk about it. So this is a very simple code from similar to the last lecture we talked about. So when we initiated x to 0 and while x is less than 10, we are printing the value of x and then incrementing x by 1. So let's put a condition up here called if x is equals to maybe 8, then just break. So instead of talking about it, let's see the example, and I'm just gonna print a few more things. Maybe let's do that this example is awesome, just like that, right? And print a few more things. So I'm gonna print maybe star and 20 times. How about that? 20 times, right? So let's run the code. So did you guys notice something? Just take a quick look. What happened is it prints this value of x is 0, example is awesome, then star, right? Value of x is 1, example is awesome, then star, right? It goes till 7, value of x is 7. After that, when the value of x becomes 8, right, then it does not print these things, right? And it's printing the value it's afterwards. So whenever the value of x becomes 8, it just does not print it. It just doesn't do it. It just breaks out of the loop and goes outside. It doesn't go anywhere. It just goes outside. So if I print something here outside of the while loop, let's say something like this, just broke out of the loop, just printing for fun. So next time after this x becomes 8, it's just gonna print this value, so like that, and it just printed that. So what happens is, as soon as the value of x becomes 8, and it becomes right after the 7th iteration, so we add it, right? So when x is 7, we add it, so it prints the value of x is 7. That's what it's doing, right? We print the value of x is 7, and then we add 1 to x, then it becomes 8, and then we are checking if x is 8. So as soon as it becomes 8, it just breaks out of the code and it does not print these two lines, and it just prints this, just broke out of the loop, because it just came out of the loop and it starts executing any line further ahead in the code. So it doesn't do anything in the code. That's what the break statement does, guys. So let's take the similar code. I'm just gonna select all, hit command, and then /. It's just gonna comment everything, right? So I'm just gonna copy it and comment it out so I can show you the continue example. So we're gonna take the same code. Instead of break, we're just gonna put continue. So after that, we actually don't need it, but let's leave it up here. So let's run the code this time and let's see what happens. So what happens is, you're gonna see it. So it says the value of x is 0. Oops, let me just put this up here, increase it. Value of x is 0, the example is awesome. Value of x is 1, example is awesome. And it goes till 7, the value of x is 7, but it did not print anything, right? The example is awesome is not printed after that. Right away it printed value of x is 8. Did you guys notice this difference? So what's happening up here? to understand this, what's happening up here is as soon as it encountered the continue statement, what happens is the code just goes back to this line number 19, and it's not the line number 19. Basically, it just goes back to the beginning of the loop, and it does not execute any of the statements afterwards. So the continue statement does is it just goes back to the beginning of the loop and again starts the loop. So next time it comes here, next time the value of x will become 9, and it will print everything out, but it will not print anything in particular when we put continue. So we have applied continue on some particular condition. When this meet the condition, it's just gonna go in front of the in the beginning of the code, right, in the beginning of the loop. So the difference between break and continue is break just breaks out of the code, breaks out of the loop, and doesn't perform any other iteration. So anything after it doesn't work, right? But in case of continue, it will not perform any further steps for that particular condition when we print it, when we use continue statement, and it'll go to the front of the loop, and but it will go next time, it's fine. So break comes out of the loop, continue just moves, continue, it just continues the loop, right, without executing the next steps for that particular condition. So there's something else to it. So let's again comment this one out and uncomment the break one. Now I want to talk about the while else statement. So this is something completely different. It's exactly as similar to the if else as we have previously seen, but there's just one difference. The else block, it executes anytime the loop condition is evaluated to false. What does that mean? So in case of if and else wouldn't execute if the if condition is correct. If will execute and it would, the code wouldn't go to the else condition. But in case of the while loop, so let's put else here. Let's put else here and let's indent it. So what I'm doing is right now I'm just gonna comment this break statement. What I'm doing is I'm just going through the loop, printing the value of x, incrementing the value of x every time, and then just printing these two statements. And after the loop will complete, what the code is gonna do is it's gonna go to the else statement, because unlike if conditions, else will always execute in the case of while. There's only one exception that I'm going to talk about. So it'll go to the else condition and it'll just do whatever we write in the else condition, right? So that's what it's going to happen. So this means that the code will execute if the loop is never entered or it exits normally. So even if the loop doesn't enter into this, if the condition is false, if it doesn't just even go the first time, still the else is gonna execute. Or anytime, so the loop is gonna execute and the loop exits fine, then also else is gonna execute. So let's run the code and let's see what happens. So it just runs perfectly fine. Value of x is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and just broke out of the loop. It is just invalid right now because we're not breaking out of the loop, but I'm just showing it just prints out. So, and the value of x is 9, that's what we're printing because we are not printing anything for 10. X should be less than 10, right? So now there's only one exception. If the loop exits as the result of a break statement, the else should not be executed. So if I say this, I should uncomment this one out, and let's see the code this time. So let's run the code. And so what happens is it prints till 7, value of x is 7, and this time it did not print, the code just broke out of the loop. Did you guys notice? It did not print it. So what happens is else block of the while does not execute if the code comes as a result, if the loop ends as a result of the break statement. Otherwise, all the time it executes. So that's also one thing that I want to talk about in this lecture. So all sounds good. So guys, just download the code for reference. As always, practice a bunch as much as you can, and let me know if you have any questions. So stay tuned for the next lecture, guys. Thanks for learning this one. Thanks, guys.